Welcome to your invitation to wade in the waters. This podcast is sponsored by Jesus. Here, we talk about a wide range of topics rooted upon what God's living water says about them. This episode will be a stepping stool for you to bring your pain to prosperity. So roll up your pants, leave the enemy behind, and let's wade in the waters with Jesus. Hello, everybody. I actually wasn't excited to film this episode during the week until today. Actually, until yesterday. Yesterday was church, and it was so amazing. It was seriously the best sermon I've heard in a while, and that's saying a lot because the church I go to, their sermons are unlike any other church. I love my church. It's called Southbrook. It's in Ohio, so if you are in Ohio, definitely visit Southbrook. Until yesterday, I had a really hard time figuring out what God wanted me to say in this episode. We're going to be talking about identity, and the reason why I was kind of struggling with creating the outline and the baseline of what I wanted to talk about is because in a way, I don't feel qualified to be talking about identity. And the reason is everybody is growing their identity. Your identity is always changing and it's always evolving. Every single day it grows, and every single situation it can alter your identity in a good or a bad way. And that's why I was a little confused and conflicted on what I should talk about because I don't have it all figured out. I really don't. But I want this episode to feel more like a conversation than a I know all, because let me tell you, I do not know. Basically, I don't know what I'm doing. But God does, and that is why I'm here today, and that's why you're watching this. So, praise God. Identity is a weird thing if you think about it, because I think I know myself. If somebody were to tell me, actually this happened this morning, somebody asked me to share a little bit about myself. I was meeting with my mentor. I love her so much. I'm so grateful that she's my mentor. But this morning we had a meeting and she asked me to tell her a little bit about myself. She wanted to know just a little bit more about my background. I always hesitate when I hear that question. That's like the one interview question that scares me the most. When people ask me, so tell me a little bit about yourself, my mind is literally going through so much warfare. It's crazy because I have so much to me. How am I going to tell somebody like everything about me? I start thinking about my qualities that I could tell them, or what I have done in my life, or it's such a wide range question that the conversation could go anywhere really with that question, depending on what you allow them to know about yourself and also what you think about yourself. It's a really odd question when you go to somebody and you ask, "Hi, how are you?" It's always good. How are you? Good. Okay, good. Good. But when you ask, "So tell me a little bit about yourself. Who are you?" Panic starts. At least for me. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one. But that question is a really hard question if you think about it, because as much as we think we know ourselves, we really don't until intentionally dissect ourselves. And that kind of sounds weird. Actually, ignore that I said that, because that's dissect yourself? Really? In other words, we have to get deep within ourselves and figure out certain things that have happened or how you have handled a situation to really know who you are. So, throughout this episode, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about myself, but also this episode is not about me. It's about you, whoever's watching or listening. I want you to leave this episode with encouragement and excitement to take one step closer into who you truly are. We can be guided and misled to a false identity, and it's really, really scary because if you become that false identity, it's going to be really hard to figure out who you actually are and who your identity actually is. So, first, before we get into that, I want to share a funny story. The prank is to ask whoever you're doing it with to tell their favorite memory of you. And while they're telling it, you have to like smile at them really weird. Like it's not a smile, it's like an ugly face. And see if they notice and what they'll say. So I'm going to play the video. Okay, what's your guys' favorite memory of me? Mom, you go first.
My favorite memory is when you used to come out dressed very eclectic with like a striped turtleneck, maybe some jeggings,
Are you making
and
that?
like
I'm just
feathered
smiling.
necklace with pearl dangly earrings. It's a TikTok. You're making fun of me.
No, just keep on going. Okay, what's yours?
My favorite memory is the day that we would travel on all of our vacations and how excited you would get in the airport with your luggage and everything. What are you doing now with your face?
Okay, that's it. That's okay. Well, it was a TikTok. It was a TikTok trend.
I like how my mom just kept on talking and blabbing. She didn't even notice it or blink twice. And I think that's because she's just used to me being really weird. And it doesn't it doesn't affect her. My dad definitely noticed and I love his reaction. So the reason why I showed you that is because memories correspond to who you are. So my mom was talking about how I have a very eclectic, or I had, it's kind of mellowed out a little bit throughout the years, but I used to have a really eclectic style. Like, I'm talking, she was a fashionista. I didn't care about name brands or anything. I really just loved putting outfits together, and I didn't even care if they matched. I just really I was drawn to certain things, and next thing you know, they were all on my body. To begin with, I was a very fashionable person, I guess you could say. I don't even know if you could call what I decided to wear fashion. It was my type of fashion. As you can imagine, I grew up really sassy. I didn't really care what anybody thought of me or my outfit, that's for sure. I love my child self. I love her. And every single day, I try to embody her as much as I can because to me, that is my true identity. It says in scripture that God sees us as a child. He sees us with childlike faith. And to have childlike faith is to be a child. When you're a kid, everything is fun and everything is lighthearted. And all you really care about is having fun and jumping on trampolines. And there's not really much worry in the world. So that's why I try to embrace and embody my childlike self every single day. As you get older, your identity starts to grow and you start to be shaped. and it gets very complicated and complex because the world is so big and it's complex. So, first things first, identity encompasses the memories, experiences, relationships, and values that we create. Over time, new relationships and new morals and new experiences and memories will come to then grow who we are. Our identity can feel like an endless question. If I were to ask you, who are you? And you could actually respond back, what would you say? What would be going through your mind? Would there be a sense of panic? Would you automatically know exactly what you're going to say? When asked that question, do you know exactly what you're going to say? Or are you like me and you're like, oh my gosh, do I tell my whole life story? Do I tell just the gist of it? Do I tell my personality traits? If we think about all of those things that are going through our mind, how we would answer, it will gauge where you are at with yourself and how good you know yourself and what you think about yourself. It's very true when people say what you think about yourself on the inside is what on the outside you carry out and how you behave, and also what people think about you. What people think about you does not matter, but how you think about yourself and what standard you set for yourself will automatically be the standard that other people hold you to. If I have piles upon piles of clothes in my back seat and water bottles that are carelessly thrown in the back seat, trash, old food that's been molded, which I've been there before. I'm going to be so real and honest. My car has looked like that before. This situation has happened in my life. I went to go pick somebody up and they had an empty water bottle and I just chucked it for them in my back seat, just very carelessly. And so the next time that I picked them up, it happened again, but this time they were the one that just threw their water bottle in my back seat. And at first, it was funny, but actually it wasn't funny because, and I know this is a very small scale, but does go to show that I lowered the standard for my friend that I picked up. I had clothes in the back seat and she saw trash in the back seat. So in her mind, it was okay and it was lighthearted. It was funny, to do that because I did it. How we live our lives and how we treat our things and ourself seriously plays a huge part in how you get treated by others. If you don't have the high standards for yourself and the morals for yourself, you're going to get walked all over and you're going to become very desperate for relationships that actually aren't good for you and actually aren't providing you any benefit because you're just so desperate. You will depend on other people to tell you your identity based on how they treat you. And that is not how it should be at all. You should already know who your identity is before you get in any kind of relationship. You should always know yourself more than other people know you. I'm a really big journal person, and I know some people aren't, but for me, journaling is really helpful. Intentionally journal about who we are and even write up our standards and what we take and what we don't take from others and also from yourself. To see it and be so visual and to just get sometimes our minds are a mess, and so to get your mess on paper is really helpful to actually see what is going on, because our heads, it's not just filled with the logic, it's filled with the emotion and how we feel and, what people are thinking about us and all of just this mess and chaos that our minds are just born with. It can be really hard to distinguish your standards and your morals and to be intentional without setting that intention and writing it out on paper. So even if you're not a big journal person, that's okay. I just encourage you to get a piece of paper out if you want, or make a list in your head. That's okay too. Going back to what I said a little bit in the beginning, about the fact that the world will fill you with false identity and will throw different experiences and distractions to you to make you feel less than, and to try to fill your identity with labels and stereotypes and different things that you think that's going to fulfill you. You think that's going to give you an identity, but in turn, you're just going farther and farther from your true identity. In therapy, sometimes people will go through childhood traumas and memories and talk about how they were as a child, because that is so important. Sometimes in therapy, people will talk about their childhood memories and trauma and the way that they were as a child, because the inner child is so vulnerable and so pure and fresh to the world that if we don't go in and figure out who we are as an inner child, as an inner being, we're not able to actually see ourselves for ourselves. We'll look in the mirror and the world will dictate who you see and what you see. As a kid, number one, you don't realize that people have opinions of you. And number two, you don't envy others. This is a world filled with envy. Nobody wants to be who they are. Everybody wants to be who somebody else is, who's more successful than them, who they think belongs in the world more than them, who carries themselves higher. Everybody wants to be everything that they're not. Your true identity does not lie within who somebody else is. Saying that seems easier said than done, because when we're in those pits and those cycles, when we're on TikTok stalking somebody, I've been there, I still do it. This is why I said in the beginning that I feel a little unqualified to be talking about it, because I'm not perfect. I still sometimes will envy people and want somebody else's life. But because that's human. Don't feel discouraged or disappointed in yourself, because it is human to feel all of these painful and joyful feelings. So when you're soaking in self-pity and when you have self-esteem issues, just know that it's human. Don't get mad at yourself for envying other people. What matters is going forward. Remember to give yourself grace. Most important thing is to acknowledge it. Acknowledge when you're in that spiral and you're comparing yourself, because the devil comes very silently and he will alter your mind silently. It won't be this huge renewal of the mind or change of the mind. It happens very silently and slowly, and unknowingly. When we're comparing ourselves, it's really hard to know that we're comparing ourselves, to be honest, because it's coded. Just like how your identity can be coded upon what the devil says about you, it's really hard to then wipe that coding off to get your raw, authentic self. The world is filled with so many people and so many different identities, so it's really hard to find that sense of self and sense of, okay, this is who I am, without anybody altering that. It's so vast that we're so easily influenced by things, people, and the stereotypes that shape our identity. I'm not going to go into much about stereotypes because I don't. That's a deeper, way deeper realm that I could go down, but I'm not going to do that today. The point is we're left with feeling like we don't know our true sense of identity when we place it in worldly things and worldly groups or worldly people. Identity is discovering and developing your potential, knowing what your purpose here on earth is, then finding the opportunities that exercise all of that exercise your purpose. Find your potential. Your potential will then find your purpose, and then your purpose will then lead to different opportunities that you can take to fulfill that purpose. First question that I want you to think about or journal about is what gives you joy and what gives you pain. The second question is what do you envy or who do you envy? Envy is when you don't carry out and experience your chosenness. Because the fact is, the truth is that you have been chosen to live this life. You have been strategically placed in your family, in your lifestyle, where you are in the world. You have been strategically placed. You've been chosen to be in that place. You lack that understanding that you are chosen, you have been chosen. It will create envy, because then you'll be looking at other people and the fact that other people have been chosen and other people are doing this and doing that and achieving this and achieving that. Your identity, the experiences that you face, the people that you meet, the situation that you have been placed in, the family that you have been placed in, it all wraps around your identity. Your identity has been chosen for you. And now we just have to go on the journey to understand that identity. And it's so easy, especially in a world filled with social media and YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. I think that social media can play a very positive role in people's life, but it also can play a very negative role in people's life because it's so easily accessible to get on your phone and look at what other people's lifestyles are like. Someone else's life and being jealous of somebody else's life is going to lead to resentment. Resentment that you feel within yourself, resentment that you feel towards other people. It's going to develop a cloud of very horrible, bleh, grossness that you have to face every single day. And in order to get out of that cloud of bleh, grossness, in order to get that cloud of resentment that weighs you down out of your life, you have to focus on yourself. You have to. If you're a tree and there's so many other trees around you, how are you going to grow when you're looking at other trees growing? You can't grow. You have to look within yourself, what's in your roots, what you need, how to nourish yourself in order for you to sprout and grow. You're not going to get any growth or anything from looking at the other trees that are growing. It motivate us, yes, and so that's why I say that social media does have its positives, because in times that I don't feel motivated, sometimes I'll go on social media to feel motivated, and that's a very good way. However, when it turns into comparing your growth to the other tree's growth, you're still a tree, by the way. in case you forgot. You're a tree, I'm a tree, everybody's a tree, and we're all growing in different times, different ways, and certain trees have to have specific things that nourish them. Desire to have somebody else's life, to be another tree, is to believe that you are not, that you are lacking something. Sermon that I heard yesterday was about envy. I wrote down some notes, so I'm going to share the notes with you. I took a lot out of the sermon, but I'm going to share with you guys the 4 things that envy does. 1, it hides. 2, it drains out the joy in your life. 3rd, it poisons your present life, the present moment that you are in right now. And then 4thly, envy reveals the true condition of your heart and soul. That's why it's so important to write down and journal about the things that you envy. Who do you envy? What do you envy? And that will indicate who you are. That's why pettiness occurs, because there's a sourness towards people that somebody has to feel in order to be petty. And in order to be petty is really a lack of yourself. It's a lack of how you see yourself. If you're treating other people all petty and mean, it's due to the fact that they feel weak and they feel small. We live in a society where everything is marketed, everything is advertised, it's glorified. We only post the amazing parts of our life, the photoshopped photos of us, the best pictures. Out of the 50 selfies that we take, we choose one, the best one to post. We live in a society where it's really hard to see our true self, because we see all of the other photoshopped people and we think that we're supposed to look like that. We're wired this way, and it's for a reason. The world does not want you to feel like you're beautiful and chosen. The world wants you to feel like everybody else is beautiful and chosen 24/7 other than you, to keep you from growing, to keep you from your full potential. Ask yourself, what makes you happy? What makes you hurt? And what makes you envy other people or other things? Are you the same as yesterday, today, and tomorrow? That question is based upon if you have standards, morals, and who you see yourself in the mirror as. When you were a kid, you didn't really think much of it. You didn't really think of who you are so much until you got to see who everybody else was, right? So when we're looking at ourselves in the mirror, even when we're grown, even when we're 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, realize that God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Maybe you're not the same as who you were yesterday, because we're humans, we're different from God. We're not on the level that God is. God's identity is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I'll say it again. God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That's in Hebrews. How does that verse play into your own identity? Are you the same as yesterday, today, and will you be the same tomorrow? God is already so confident in his own identity. He knows his identity because there's not a God like him. On the contrary, we're humans. We are a species. There's so many of us that we are able to compare ourselves. God isn't even able to compare himself, even if he wanted to. He can't, because he is one God. Isn't that amazing that we serve and we believe in a God that has a childlike identity? when we read into who our creator is, who our parent is, we're able to then unlock who we are and understand more about who God has made us to be, because we are children of Him. To know God is to read the Bible, His Word, His life, and to pray to Him, to be in communication with Him. Reading the Bible seems daunting and scary. I promise you it's not. You just have to start at the right spot. Don't start in the beginning. It's not like a normal book where you start in the beginning and then you end. John is a really good book to start with. It's really easy to read. He was one of the disciples that walked with Jesus and followed him. When you're reading, look for Jesus and not yourself. A lot of times, even me, I will try to look for myself in the scripture and look for my self-benefit. It is important to note, though, when you are reading the Bible, don't look for yourself, look for God, because He is the one that is so certain in His character. We are not certain in our character. We are not the same as yesterday, today, and tomorrow, but He is. And so when you look for Him, it'll help you a lot more to understand who you are versus if you're looking in the scripture for yourself. And all right, I think that wraps up this episode. I am so grateful that you have listened to me blab and blab and blab throughout this whole thing and made it to the end. I encourage you to pick up that pen and paper or mentally and take note and journal about you and journal about God. If you enjoyed this episode and want more, subscribe to my YouTube and then follow my Spotify account. That's Waiting in the Waters for Spotify and then Maddie Rosemiller for YouTube. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'll see you next week. Thursday at 12, baby. I love you. Bye-bye. Stay thirsty for Jesus as always.